me say special good morning to the entire Tri-Island, Grenada, our sister isles of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Good Monday morning. It's Monday, October the 31st, the final day within the month of October. An interesting month, eh? Very interesting month, I would say. Let me say good morning to our listeners this morning, wherever you're listening to us from, wherever you're in the Sister Isles, yes, Carriacou, Petit Martinique, good morning. Those of you in the, of course, back down to the mainland, starting from St. Patrick, St. Mark, St. John, go over to St. Andrew, St. David, and the capital of the nation. We say good morning to those of you within the parish of St. George's. Good morning, thanks for listening, especially those of you via terrestrial radio, and you're listening, good morning, blessed morning to you. Those of you via GBN TV, whether it's Channel 7, Channel 11, or Channels 20, good morning. Hope all is well, and let's go to our social media. And you know, there's always that broad listenership via social media, especially the Facebook page. Let me say blessed morning to you. Those of you also taking the time to view via the YouTube channel, blessed morning to you also. Hope all is well. Hope everyone had a great weekend, and you're looking forward towards a productive week as far. Hope that the week will certainly run out very well for you. Well, it's Monday, and you know what happens here on a Monday via To The Point, and welcome to The Point. Did I say welcome to The Point? Yeah, I think I did. Anyway, let's see. Welcome to those of you via To The Point. And you know what happens on a Monday here on To The Point? Myself and my co-host, Mr. Sylvan Intyre, should be letting him chip in shortly. And we talk about various issues when it comes to emergency risk management, and he being a professional in that aspect, of course, gives all the details in terms of how you could manage situation when it comes around to an emergency. So I certainly thank him out, because there's always a wealth of knowledge coming from him, and we certainly do learn a whole lot. You, our listeners, and certainly myself, do learn a whole lot. Let's go over to Sylvan this morning and say good morning to Sylvan. Sylvan, good morning, and how are you, sir? How are you doing this morning?
Hi, good morning to you, GT.
I see somebody bugging you in the background there, man.
Yes.
How are you this morning?
I am great. I am good. How is Grenada?
Yeah. All is well actually in Grenada. All is well for the morning. I had a little showers earlier this morning, and but from my advantage point, for what I know thus far, all is well. I would certainly say all is well.
Great. And let me say good morning to all our followers, our viewers, listeners to the GBN network. As you rightly said, we've been having some useful conversation over the last couple of weeks. It has taken some traction, and I look forward to the Monday morning every week. And so I guess as it comes lower down to the end of the year, we'll probably be switching gears a little bit into speaking a bit about some specifics that is likely to happen around the closing of the year. I mean, Christmas is in the air. We know we have graduations, etc. And we know, I think, for this weekend, there is the All Saints, All Souls event and so forth. So we are going to be touching a little on that. And as usual, we would chime in on a little bit of any emergency that may have happened within the last week in Grenada.
Yep.
We'll look at anything that we can pick up within the region, the Caribbean, and also in the international community. Yep. And in that vein, I would want to touch on, I think there was a runaway vehicle in one of the service stations.
Yes, that happened sometime last week. Yes.
Right. So we're going to touch about a little bit on that. We have in South Korea an event for Halloween where just under 150 persons lost their lives and just around the same number seriously injured. We also want to touch in on an emergency security issue in the United States where the husband of the Speaker of the House was accosted by an assailant. And we will look at the security emergency issue. We'll look at general issues at places where people assemble and so for events and how that emergency system could be managed. And in the case of Grenada, where we saw that runaway vehicle, we can also talk about how we can prepare or mitigate against some of these kinds of emergency. But specific to our topics for the last couple of weeks in first aid, we are going to be looking at first aid kit. We know that every home should have one. I would want to make mention of vehicle owners and users, the commuters, the bus drivers, and so on, whether or not they too should have first aid kits on their buses. what the components of these kits should include and how they can be used. So we seem to have a wide range of things to discuss this morning, but we definitely will give an opportunity to viewers and listeners to chime in with their own questions, so we would address them. So that's an overview of where we are going to be this morning, and obviously you would lead me where you would want me to walk.
Oh, sure, certainly sure in that. You know, last week, Sylvan, the conversation we had was based a lot on CPR, and being around for the weekend and the days after the program, I had lots of feedback from individuals who said to me, GT, you and Sylvan has thrown out some information there, especially when they're pertaining to youngsters. Okay, you know, a lot of individuals seem to think, well, you're doing first aid, you're supposed to do it to a youngster or an infant, just that's how you deal with an adult. And someone was saying to me, you know, I never knew, you know, that I'm supposed to be applying the compression in the manner in which you of course demonstrated. You know, and they were happy that we went along those lines, because it was very helpful to them, because they're saying they are in a situation where they are among children most of the time. You understand? Being a coach, the individual saying, I'm being a coach, and sometimes I have never really gone through the process of learning for CPR and stuff like that, and being able to listen to you all, you know, saying what you did in terms of the procedures and stuff, and they were saying that they certainly learned a lot, and they will be tuned in this morning to make sure that they can absorb more in terms of ways that could help them to, you know, to put the practice of what you said, to put into practice of what you said, just in case a situation of that arises, you know, and so they were happy about that.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you mentioned this as well, and I want to indicate here that what we are doing on these programs, we're not going very deep into the details of most of these topics. We are basically giving an understanding, and hopefully people can just get the framework as to how they can do these things. So there are full courses and there are extensive work that people can do, especially if you run an institution or you belong to a group or you are responsible for groups of persons. Like, as you mentioned, there might be coaches that would require that. There might be daycare centers that might require that kind of a training. There might be teachers in schools that would have people in their care, and there would be schools, principals, and teachers that would have students under their care as well. And that kind of a training and skill is something that they should really acquire. And as I said previously on the program, we're hoping through this new initiative that first aid and emergency response will become a household issue, and that people will become more and more informed and obviously more and more prepared. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to choose to speak on a first aid kit, what it should have and how it should be used, because now we are teaching people what to do. We're telling them what to do, but we must be able to tell them how they can use what is available, or the things that are available that they can do these things with. Yeah. Okay.
As you mentioned it, let's just get into it, because this is a line of questions I have relating to this. Let's get into the first aid kit. Now, we hear from time to time been mentioned, when announcements have been made, especially when there's maybe a hazard that occur or there's a potential for a disaster to occur or has occurred. They always say make sure that these are the things that you stock. You understand? Make sure you have a first aid kit. Now, tell us as folks who are listening and viewing, what is the real reason why an individual should have a first aid kit? It may be a simple question, but it may have some significance in it from way or the other. Why someone should always have a first aid kit?
And I want to go back to one of the old sayings from my grandparents or parents growing up. They would say it is better to say here is it than to ask where is it, and that's the bottom line, meaning that it is always good to have something to deal with something than to ask for something when something happened. And that's the bottom line in simple terms, why we need a first aid, because emergency will occur, and when it occurs, then you start scrambling. And the baseline for learning first aid is that we said we want to preserve somebody's life. We want to prevent injuries from becoming worse, and we want to promote recovery. Now, if we need to do that, even if we say that it is using readily available material, that readily available material could come in two forms. You can either have it pre-positioned or you have it already there, or when something happens, you just use what is available around you to effect it. And it is important that every household and every vehicle technically should have, because it prevents a situation from really prolonging when it should not be. And it also eases up the need for people heading to the emergency department with minor things that if they knew how to handle it, they don't have to take it there. I remember you asking me the question before, how do I know know when they should not or should take a situation to an emergency care? The bottom line here is, once you learn something in first aid, you become experienced in dealing with some basic things. You'll be confident then that, you know what, this situation will heal. It can be prolonged for a period of time, and then I can seek additional care. It is widely established that the initial intervention and application is most critical in any emergency situation.
All right, Sylvan. My other question is, okay, you give that information there. What should a first aid kit entail? Are there various types of first aid kits, or what should it entail?
Yes. No, and that's a very very good question in terms of the types of kit. It depends on what you are involved in may require a particular first aid kit. There are like individual kits that you can carry just you as an individual. You know that is for your own protection, and maybe if it happened to somebody else, you have enough that you can at least assist one other person. Those are very small personal kits, and they are family-sized kit, 4 persons or more, and that would depends on the amount of the items that you want to keep in it. For instance, if you are a footballer, there need to be a trained first aider on every football team, technically, or in a group or in a club. That person would have a bag that would contain particular items based on the injuries that are expected. The most common one that you would come across in football. So we're expecting that person to have a larger size kit than the regular individual kit. If you are a hiker, someone who is going to the field pretty often, very outdoor going and all of that, fishing, and these require some variations to your kit. And again, a first aid kit doesn't have to be one that you purchase ready packed, ready made from a pharmacy or so. You can choose your own box and make your own first aid kit. And I think that would be reassuring to a lot of people, because they might be thinking, well, I have to go to some place and get this thing that has a cross on it, whether it's a green or white or a red cross that says first aid. You really don't have to do that. You can get your own box. You can get one of these containers, air-sealed, tight containers that you can put those things that I'm going to mention in a while inside of that kit to ensure that when you need something that you have something there. Right. So I speak of now the specifics. You want to have things like gauze and cotton. What really is gauze? Gauze is that simple strips of dressing that one can put over a wound. So say that somebody gets a small incision or a puncture, so they would use these small pieces of gauze to make the first application to control the bleeding. Now, once one is intending to use any kind of dressing, it has to be something that is lint-free, because it's going to go on the wound. So you don't want the lint to start sticking into the wound. You want to use something that is absorbable, that can take moisture and so on. You want to be able to have it wide enough that it can cover the wound. And it comes to mind here, one of the things that could be readily available. A lot of people don't realize that even the sanitary napkins that the females use, that is very useful when you have people having wounds, etc. It is right there. You can cut it to size. You can use full size. It is designed to absorb moisture, and that is a useful thing, even in a first aid kit, that somebody can put in. You would have things like a scissor or a tweezer. Now that, and having said that, let me just back up a bit. Once there is a first aid kit is identified for keeping in a home, it means, therefore, that you're getting to the point where somebody knows how to use it. So when we speak of using tweezers and scissors, it therefore means that there is somebody who knows what size to cut, what material to cut, what is the use of the tweezer. Now, you have the tweezer there that is just like a little pincher that can pull out anything that might be embedded that you can remove very safely. Something that might be contaminating the open wound that is there, you can move that very safely. you have a scissor so you can cut maybe a piece of cloth, or you may cut the bandage that might be too wide for the particular dressing that we are speaking about. There are some ointments that are specific to certain injuries. You can have that in there as well. There is something also that is called a burn cream that could be prescribed, or it can be purchased. And people who know that application, or who train to use that, if there's somebody who gets a burn after it's been cooled and so forth, you can apply that. And someone may ask, what kind of medication, if any, one should keep in a first aid kit? A basic first aid trained person, well, technically is not advised to administer medication. Any medication has to be prescribed by a doctor. But things like Panadol, paracetamol, and things that are over the counter already given in doses, they are authorized to keep in first aid kit, because it gives the instruction. I will see exactly what you can use. You have antibiotics, things that you can use you have betadine solution, you have iodine, and these things that, one could keep in small quantity, that if there is a wound before you put the dressing on it, you can clean out the wound and put that on it as well. Bandages, regular bandages like triangular bandage, or even if you don't have a real cut triangular bandage, but you have proper pieces of cloth, maybe from a sheet, maybe from some baby diaper or something like that, so that you can fold it nicely and you can keep it in a kit. I want to mention something that will generate, I'm sure, some discussion. You would want to clean wound with things like alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Now, that rubbing alcohol is at a point where, and the solution itself is, the amount of alcohol it has in it is just sufficient to be able to clean and prevent bacteria from spreading, etc. People tend to have methylated spirit and strong spirits and rum, etc., that they want to put an open wound, and that is basically a no-no. The other thing that traditionally people have been keeping in the kits and the home is that of hydrogen peroxide. And this will probably create a little bit of maybe controversy to an extent, but it has been recently asked to be discontinued in regular use, meaning that the average layperson should not use it, because the consistency of it is so harsh to the open wound that it can disturb the process of healing and so forth. It is still used in medical centers to a limited extent. The surgeons and the doctors would understand what amount of it that they can use. But for regular use, it is not something that is recommended, that when somebody gets a wound or so, that you would openly just pour regular alcohol or even hydrogen peroxide over that wound. I guess this is new knowledge, information to some people, and it is something that we would wish that people would take on board, because over the years, that's what they've found, that using that substance on an open wound, it becomes so harsh that it destroys some of the cells and the healing properties, the antibodies that are beginning to reform themselves. It could really disturb, it could really retard that process, and healing may become more difficult. And this is why when somebody gets a wound, it is advised, once it's an open wound, that you would check the hospital as quickly as possible, because the quicker you get that care, is the easier the attachment will happen when one gets a wound. And having said so, elastoplast or plasters, and sometimes we call them butterfly plasters, that one can put on an open wound. Remember, all of the things that I'm saying here, if not all, but most of them, they are very temporary measures, because you're not a doctor and you're not trying to take the place of doctors. What you're trying to do is render that quick care, so that the situation does not become worse. So once you have a situation where there is an open wound or so, you can apply these plasters or elastoplast that one may have. You put them on, you put a dressing over that, and you put a bandage, wrap it up, and you can use that same triangular bandage to make an elevation or an arm sling, so that the person that may have a wound on the arm in some place or the other, you can use that also to make a sling. You have things like bandages that you put in the kit. So like the footballers, you have this elastic type bandages that you put on joints. So somebody gets an ankle sprain, and so these bandages, the elastic type flexible ones, is what you're going to use in that joint area to immobilize or to limit the movement of that area. I would pause here for a moment, and I guess you may have a little bit of question on that. Now, these are some of the basic things. You can expand on that to where more advanced thing could be put in a kit, but it will be specific to the user of that kit. So, for instance, there is something called a tourniquet. You may have seen it, or people may have seen it on television, they may have seen it in movies, and that is a sort of, in some case, an elastic type string that what one would apply when there is sometimes an amputation or where some body part is seriously or severely cut, where the person is bleeding profusely. You want to be able to control the bleeding. And it is only used by an advanced trained person who is able to control the blood to the point where you do not totally cut off circulation. It is not advised for beginners, people who don't know, and what we've seen people do have been doing in the past, that once somebody gets a wound, they think it is okay to tie a piece of string or use these design tourniquet to turn to a point where it becomes so tight that the blood is totally cut off. These can be used, but only by paramedics, EMTs, etc., who are trained to use it. It is often used sometimes in theater where there is a surgery undertaken and the surgeon wants to limit or cut off the blood supply totally from that area. He would apply a tourniquet, and thereafter he would release it gradually so that circulation could continue. The average person in a family on the street will not be aware of that. If you put this on and somebody has to be taken for a particular distance to get second care, by the time they get there, the body part may have to be amputated, and in some cases, it could actually lead to loss of life because the circulation could not have happened.
All right.
Yes?
So when we drew for a break, let's take that break and we come back and we certainly will discuss much more. It's K105 GBN TV. It's to the point for today, Monday. We're coming right back after the break.
National Insurance Scheme continues to make it easy to access our services using the MyNIS online platform. Now we're introducing a new feature that allows you to submit your benefit claims from the convenience of your smart devices. No paper, no hassle. All you have to do is log in to my.nisgrenada.org. Select claims, fill out the relevant information, and click submit. We'll take it from there. It's that simple and that easy. Submit a claim from the comfort of your home as you rest and recuperate. Enjoy the convenience of faster claim processing and monitor the status of your claim every step of the way. We are excited to introduce this new feature to better serve you. NIS is changing the game and the way you make your claim. Access anywhere and anytime with MyNIS Online.
Let's mingle and jingle.
You mean jingle and mingle, right?
Does it really matter? Mingle and Jingle, the mid-morning program that will drive the Christmas season. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Classic Radio, GBN Television, and all GBN social media platforms.
It's where the deals of the season are, where the Christmas music is played, holiday traditions are relived, and where all the fun is.
Mingle and Jingle.
Or Jingle and Mingle. Mid-mornings from November 14th to December 23rd only on the GBN network.
Made possible by
Flow,
West the Hall Drums,
Hard On Plus,
Judy Free Caribbean Holdings,
Ace Hardware,
Gittins Healthcare, and
Grenville Credit Union.
Feel good facts.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
The best way to protect yourself from 2019 novel coronavirus is to avoid being exposed to the virus. Additionally, there are preventative actions that you can take to protect yourself and your family from the spread of respiratory viruses that can make you sick. These include stay home if you're sick, cover your cough, and wash your hands.
Welcome back, one and all. Welcome back to the point for today, Monday, the 31st day of October, 2022. And who have my co-host with me this morning once again as Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. And this morning we started off with speaking about first aid kit, the composition of it, how folks are able to use this thing that the first aid kit should entail, and the possible uses of what's entailed within the first aid kit. We spent a bit of a time on that, and certainly I hope the listeners and viewers out there did learn a lot in terms of, when I'm going out to get a first aid kit, doesn't mean, as Sylvan actually mentioned, you don't have to go look for any professional made kit. It could be a plastic bag or a bag, then you just make sure it's properly sealed off, and you put the necessaries in there, as you mentioned, what you think for the purpose of where you're going to be at, just in case. You're not saying you're wishing for something would happen, but you put the necessaries in there just in case. So we'll come back once again. We did spend, as I mentioned, a lot of time talking about the composition of and the usage of first aid kit. We spent a lot of time on that. We're going to have a slight diversion, and somehow the slight diversion may roll into folks being able to have a first aid kit readily available. You understand?
Definitely.
Let's talk about some local issues that may have occurred recently. And as you did mention that in the intro, we saw a couple of days ago or sometime last week where that individual had lost control of the vehicle. I'm making an assumption there, and he got into and lost control, went into that gas station, and suddenly we saw what happened there. I don't have much details about it, just from the little video that I saw. I mean, having a first aid kit maybe within the establishment at that time. Give me. What do you think? An issue of that nature. Use of first aid kit and so even some of the international related issue that has happened recently. We saw what happened. Was it in Seoul? Where that issue in Seoul happened there, where individuals lost their lives. Imagine if individuals being there and someone may just have something in their bag that could have helped save someone's life. You understand? Yes. Let's hear what you think.
Great. So, and remind me that I need to speak of the All Saints as well, because it's happening.
Yes, that's happening tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. So that incident could, as you rightly pointed out, the two angles there should have been prepared. One, the institution or the place where that vehicle ran into, they should have had a first aid kit in there, just in the event that some of the workers got injured, and they should have been treated. The vehicle, in that sense as well, should have had one in the vehicle, so that if people in that vehicle got injured, that they too could have been treated. And you very rightly identified that preparedness and preparation it comes from all angles. And having a first aid kit would aid that process of recovery and, again, prevent a situation from becoming worse. But it goes even beyond that. Preparing for the road. Oftentimes, we find ourselves becoming too busy in doing what is called the PMCS, the preventive maintenance checks on vehicles. And people would just, once the vehicle could roll, the vehicle engine can start, they would just jump in and move off. But if you recognize there are just only a few things and pins that hold the brakes together, and there's just a few ounces of fuel in that brake cylinder that keeps the brake together, and there's only also a tin turning mechanism that keeps the steering together. So it makes good sense before one venture out. Last night when you parked the vehicle, it might have been perfect. It might have been good because you had it working throughout the day, throughout the night. As the vehicle cooled down, something may have happened. It makes good sense. Take the extra 5 minutes or so, pull the bonnet open, check the inside, turn and ensure that the brake cylinder is up at the level where it should be. You turn your steering, make sure it is there. The engine oil, that it is being checked, etc. And your battery poles, they're also together. All of these little things can prevent a situation from happening. That is emergency preparedness, and that is situation that could be applied where you can prevent a situation from getting other people involved, other people's life being put at risk because you failed to have done what you should do. I am absolutely sure if we have more people doing checks on their vehicles before they move them out, some of the issues on the road that occur. As you said, we don't know what may have caused this runaway vehicle, but it could have been mechanical, it could have been physical condition. it is important that we prepare ourselves mentally and physically to prevent emergency. If you've been drinking over a weekend or over some festive session, maybe a social birthday party or otherwise, or you may have worked excessive hours where you did not get sufficient rest, it is absolutely necessary to take some measure. The kinds of things that you consume, the kind of things that you eat could contribute negatively or positively to your alertness being on the road. So that in itself, it is helping to prevent emergency if people treat themselves right. If your job is physically and long hours demanding, it therefore means that you need to deny yourself of some other time and find sufficient time to rest. Always rest before venturing out into the next event. One of the things that drivers do is they always think that we have sufficient time to get home. I've done it more than one time. I feel that my eyes or my body is beginning to, I pull over under a street light somewhere, turn the windows up, leave a little space in it, shut the engine off, take a 5-10 minutes, and then I am good to go. And that is a practice in defensive driving that a lot of people should do. So in speaking about that situation, it could be mechanical. It could be the inability of the driver or the user of the vehicle to have prepared themselves and the vehicle properly for the road. And the extent of what injury may have happened, it also can impact on how well that building owners and the people on the inside were prepared, having a first aid kit or being trained to deal with the situation. So we cover that one.
In the case of what happened, we saw on the international scene there in Seoul, what we saw was that a lot of folks being in that crowded area, and we saw where some folks were crushed by the mass, of course, of people moving in and around. How someone could prevent themselves from getting into a situation like that, and because that in case is a form of emergency, how you look at it. You understand?
Yes, no, it is. It definitely is. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you where this is pointing. And a lot of people are not aware that once there is mass gathering in a particular area, there are certain licenses and conditions that one should have to operate certain functions. So it speaks to the capacity of the facility, the emergency procedure that are employed, and again, it speaks to the state mechanism. In our case, when things like this happen, we have to look at what we have in place should a similar event occur. Do we have a regime of inspection where people are holding these parties and these big shows and so forth? Is there an inspection process by the security apparatus, by the fire and safety units of the country? Do they have to apply for a particular certificate? Is an inspection undertaken to show that these places, they can host people safely? If we're not there, it is something that we need to look into, whether the exits are clearly marked and not just marked for lit activities, but there are times when the power will shut off. These exit luminance that people can see and they can exit. Is there an emergency microphone or alarm system that will alert people that something is happening? Is there an emergency plan that says to people, this is where you can exit, this is who is responsible, this is the assembly area where you should go, and all of that. It is speaking to all of this, and as Grenada continue to grow and develop, more and more we have to move to that level of preparedness. The response system. In our earlier program, we spoke about a dispatcher system, the 911, and we see two international situations here where our dispatcher system could have either failed the system or enhanced it. We saw in the United States where the husband of the Speaker of the House, Mr. Pelosi, he was attacked. And as the news released, it was because of the effectiveness of the dispatcher that was able to identify the call and activate the emergency system really quickly that the police were able to get to that scene to prevent a situation that could have become more. Mr. Pelosi was actually hospitalized. I think he's still there. But it speaks to the effectiveness of the system where they got there and they actually met the gentleman with the hammer and did saw some of the assault that was meshed out on the state official. It is saying to us as well how we prepare mass situations, what kind of a dispatcher emergency system that we have if something happened that we can react and connect our emergency responders quickly, and how our security for our state officials, our prime minister, our ministers of government, our judges, our lawyers and magistrates, etc. What kind of a system that we have for their own protection, because they are key national officials. So I am opening, maybe I hope it's not a can of worms, but I'm hoping that I can enlighten us as to where we should be going, because our world is now a global village. It is widely established. And what's happening in the international community, we are not immune or too far away for these things to happen. So when we see things happen, as we have been observing, we need to be able to take a cue from that. So what we saw with this under, I think, 146 persons who lost their lives, young people, in the situation in Korea, South Korea it was. And then we saw situations elsewhere where other things are happening. We're saying to ourselves, could a similar situation happen here in Grenada? And if it happened, how well are our responders? And how well is our emergency response system capable of dealing with situations like this?
All right. I'm just going to mention to our listeners and viewers, if there is any question you would like to ask Sylvan, he's certainly open to asking you to respond to it. You know, we could have a follow-up of our CPR program last week. Is there an emergency situation out there that you know of and you think that it may not have handled properly, and you may have a question pertaining to that you would like us to answer? We certainly will welcome your questions. I'm seeing one question here that been posted, Sylvan, and let's see if it's a question that you're able to answer. Most likely, I think you're able. And this individual is asking, is every household should have a fire extinguisher, especially where we see lately a lot of fires are occurring. Is it proper that every household should have a fire extinguisher?
It is ideal, but it is not quite practical. I don't think that every person in Grenada will be able to own a fire extinguisher. But in the absence of owning a fire extinguisher, there are other measures that people can take that could substitute for a fire extinguisher. As a matter of fact, in the old times, you look at a police station and a lot of business places, and you walk along the corridors and you will see these buckets with sand. And people wonder why these buckets with sand, and people use them to keep doors open, etc. And they never understood that they were placed there in the event that you have a fire, you can suppress it by using sand. And the fire department of the RGPF have been doing a fantastic job. They have been going through business places and homes and teaching them things that they can do outside of having a fire extinguisher. So yes, it is ideal for homes to have even smoke alarms. I think there is a project now where there have been some donated and some homes have been installed with smoke alarms, etc. But it is not practical for every home to get one, and it's not practical for every home to have a fire extinguisher. Where the fire department recognize that there is a high risk for fire to happen, they have been getting into these communities and advising homeowners, etc., as to what they can do. And having spoken about that, the season is coming up where a lot of electricals and so on will be overloaded and be used, and they can be causes of fire. But to answer the question directly, it is ideal, but not practical.
So we do have a caller online. Let's go to the caller and see what question he has asked. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Mr. McIntyre.
Good morning, sir.
On the news, right? Russia, America, there have been numerous threats of nuclear attack. I'd like to know what system Grenada has in place in case of such. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a heavy one. I don't think nowhere in the world could be totally prepared. This is why all the discussions are going on to avoid a nuclear collision or encounter. A nuclear explosion really absorbs the breathing oxygen and all that within the atmosphere, so it becomes difficult for people to even survive. I cannot tell you that any country in the world could be best prepared for that. The only people to an extent that may have some level of preparedness are those who are on military lines that maybe be outfitted with respirators and these things that are designed to combat certain chemical and biological effects, and even these are not 100 proof. and there are places that have been built to accommodate these things, but no country could be totally prepared for a nuclear catastrophe. It is not an understatement to call it a catastrophe, and we would hope that something of that nature doesn't really happen. So I cannot say that Grenada could be prepared for a nuclear situation. But where we are located in terms of the threat that exists with Russia and Ukraine, etc., we do not know the extent of those ICBMs or otherwise, or those missiles that can carry those items and so across the globe. But wherever it is, we can have indirect effects of it. And if one of these threats come to Grenada, I can tell you we can be wiped out, because it doesn't take a lot to contaminate the atmosphere, where radiological, biological, or even chemical is concerned.
We do have a caller, Sylvan.
Countries like ours cannot really handle situations like this.
Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yes, good morning, JT. Good morning, Mr. McIntyre. I just want to ask, is there a requirement for to put out different types of fire? So just help us to know what about the fire extinguisher. If we could just have one for any type of fire, if it's caused by electrical, if it's caused by, because I heard that if you throw water on electrical fire, you're going to cause more problems. So just help us out, us householders, on that, please. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the fire department would be I'm sure coming through the season they'll be giving some more lectures on that. But yes, there are different fire extinguishers based on the what is fueling the fire. So for instance, there is foam that will be used for items where they could have gas and oily situations and so on. You would use foam on them, and in a regular situation you would use water. And there is not just one extinguisher that is capable of doing all three, but you will have to have a combination of. In some cases, the foam overrides most of the kinds of fire that may occur, and again, it has to deal with the area where these things are occurring. So for instance, if an airport or a plant, a chemical plant, is more likely to have a particular fire, they would design the foam and the extinguishing agent that is able to deal with that. In most cases, foam is the overriding agent that controls most fire, but water is most common. And this is why it is more expensive, it is less available to have foam, so it is used under condition where it is only necessary to use it, because that is what will extinguish the fire. But water is not advised for every kind of situation, because we have electrical fires, etc. Water becomes a conductor, and where you have oily situation and so on, the water helps to move the oil from one place to the other, and so in most cases it has to be specified as to what the place is exposed to, and the extinguisher would be advised as to what should be kept. But for the average household person, a regular water extinguisher or having access to a hydrant or pipe and so on is just what people should really use.
All right. And someone is saying, that the kitchen in every restaurant should have a fire extinguisher. And this is also an electrical adapter made in China that has heated and sticks to outlets, causing you to have the outlet, something of this nature. I'm trying to get the gist of what the person is actually talking about, but he's saying that not every kitchen should have a fire extinguisher. That's what he's saying. So let me do for a break. Let's take this break, and when we come back, we will entertain more questions from our viewing and listening audience this morning. It's To The Point for today, Monday. We're coming right back. Stay with us, folks.
And it's been so on this beautiful island where there's so much to see. Every corner I turn, there's something there to remind me of my beautiful nation and what it means to me. Not a thing out of place, that's what's special about it. And do you hear? It's the songs the birds are singing. Do you hear? It's a sound that's everlasting, and there's no end in sight. Just the beginning of our lives, sweet Grenada. This is home, yes. And do you hear?
Welcome back to our listeners and viewers. It's to the point for today, Monday, the 31st day of October, 2022. So when we do have a call online, let's see what this caller do have to ask in terms of a question this morning, in terms of related to what we're speaking about. Let's go to the phone line. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Hey, good morning. How you doing, brother?
Doing pretty good.
Good morning to Sylvan to you. Long time I hear your voice.
Good man.
A country that leaves people, but a country that depends on public bus system. And the leaves people on the side of the road.
Somehow we lost that caller in terms of what he was trying to ask, so he may have to call us back. So, when I have a question that I would like to ask, it just came to mind during the break, and it relates to fires. Now, there are do's and don'ts when someone is in a fire, get burned and stuff like that. What are the do's and don'ts from your professional experience? What are the do's and don'ts that individuals should not do to an individual when they get into a fire, especially the severity of the burns they may have encountered? What are some of the do's and don'ts before we entertain another caller?
Okay, good. So let me just make an overarching statement. Fires may not be able to be totally extinguished, but they could be controlled. So some people, in most occasions, they would try to totally extinguish a fire, and that might not be possible. But what one can do is to apply control mechanisms that it does not go beyond a certain point. Remember, fire has to be fueled. It has to be started by something and fueled by something. Oxygen is one of the things that will fuel fire very easy. So once a fire has occurred in a particular area, what one should do is try to limit the access to oxygen in that area. So you find that a building may be set at fire and people may just rush in, smash all windows, etc., and suddenly the entire place is engulfed in fire. One of the protective measures that people can take before a fire occurs is to actually set fire alarms. So how many persons could have fire alarms? The other thing that people can do is to also ensure that they separate chemicals. For instance, even the chemicals that one uses in kitchen for cleaning, etc., and all of that. The cleaning agents, they can have chemical reactions that can create combustion. You can also have dry and other things that you have in your kitchen, around the stove, and all of these things. You want to be able to keep these things away. In the event that a place goes up, and people say that smoke does not come without fire, you want to ensure that if you see something that look unsafe, it may well be unsafe. You don't take chances. And in the event that a place becomes smoke-filled, because hot air rises, people are advised that you stay as low as possible. And try to find and feel your way as low as possible. Understand, and this is why it is important, even in workplaces and business places, that people understand where the exits are. So God forbid that the place become engulfed in smoke or otherwise, people can feel their way very low and trying to get to an exit. People have been advised to cover the nose or the breathing area with a damp cloth. That will slow the process of inhaling that smoke, which can block people's airway. One of the don'ts that people should not engage in is to get where a fire may be suspected to have been caused electrical. As I did indicate, the water will carry some level of conductivity. It would move the electricity from one point to the other. But the electricity may be the cause of the fire, but places or other things that may be on fire might not necessarily be attached to electricity. So in this case, you may want to look at breaking things away that may prevent the fire from spreading from one place to the other. One of the things that has been done, fire is not just moved from one place because of the flame, but once a particular area gets to a certain level of heat, it can be ignited. So it is not just the spark that sets the blaze, but once the heat level gets at ignition point, it will start a fire. People have to be mindful of that. So if one house is on fire and there are others, and this is why you see when a fire occurs, the fire department would wet the adjacent houses so that they can cool the area down so that the fire does not spread from one point to the other.
So let me do have a caller. Let's entertain this caller and we come back. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yeah, morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Go right ahead.
Good morning.
I think Mr. Sylvan had said they reminded to talk about I think it was autism as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that didn't happen and time was running out. So I thought me call to remind you. Apparently that's it.
All right.
You want to just talk about that?
Yeah, right. Thank you.
No, Sylvan had said that to remind him.
Oh, so you called to remind him.
Thank you for that.
I just called call and give you a reminder.
Thank you, caller. All right, man. All right. Thank you, caller. There, because we certainly slipped on that.
GT. Before we run out of time, when we're having these programs, that time is never enough. But as the caller reminded us about the All Saints activities and the tradition of the bamboo busting, it is I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, we had a youngster who lost his life because of the same bamboo busting event. And I heard the police, CRD department did speak about it, and they obviously have been doing some safety measures where that is concerned. I'm sure they will be on the program maybe later on or sometimes speaking about that. But it is one of the events that carry a level of risk. It is fun. As a boy, as a child, I participated in those, and I can tell you, lost a lot of my eyebrow, eyelashes and so on were burnt off, and in some cases had scars. Because one of the measures people employ, they would mix fuel. And I understand in some instances people have put gasoline and kerosene and sometimes diesel, they put them together. And in the haste and in the rush, sometimes they would pull the wrong fuel and pour into that bamboo to create the explosion. And that explosion itself comes in the opposite direction, and people, get seriously burned and can lose their lives. So we want to put a word of caution against this, that I am not too sure that this activity is banned by the police, but it is something that does happen traditionally where this bamboo busting take place. In the event that such a thing is happening, parents must get involved and ensure that they supervise their children and ensure that if they are using some form of fuel, that it is what they are intending to use. Now, if that being the case, somebody was speaking about having fire extinguisher, that's an opportunity to have fire extinguisher, or have things with either sand or water, that if something goes out, that it can be extinguished. Similar, there are people there's always a measure of risk with any kind of activity, and that carries a burn risk with it. Remember in our burn presentations earlier on, we did see that once somebody gets a burn, the first thing you want to do is to cool the area down with water. So you cool the area down with regular water immediately, and then you increase the coolness by getting ice water, and it may get to the point where you may have to use not directly the ice on the event, but having it wrapped in a rag or something, and you apply it, you what you call compress it over the area for a period of time, so it reduces the swelling and reduce the burning effect and reduce inflammation from occurring in that area. So these are just some basic safety measures that my advice to parents and householders and people who are involved. If there's one person or two persons usually running that bamboo, the other should stay a particular distance. The items used must be inspected, ensuring the kind of item that is to be used. The risk carried is fire, so fire extinguishing agent should be available in the event that one of these go out of control, that you can extinguish it immediately. If someone's clothes happen to get caught in the fire, if you can have the person get down, rolled over, quickly so that you reduce. And somebody was asking on the program companies, why do you roll somebody over when their clothes catch on fire? Well, the application of that is to reduce the amount of oxygen that would get to the area, so it stifles it a bit. If you can get the clothes off really quickly, is even better. But if the person can be brought low, the process of stifling the fire takes place, then you get it extinguished and then it could be taken off. If the person happened to be seriously burnt, what you want to do is to remove that clothing from around the area that the most seriously burned, have it covered with a moist, clean item, and the person should be rushed to the medical facility that is nearest.
So we do have a caller, and maybe our final caller this morning. Let's go to the phone line. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Telesford.
Good morning.
And good morning, Mr. McIntyre.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I just want to relate on something that you know said a while ago concerning burn.
Yes.
But we know that burn is something that you want to try to cool it down as much as possible.
Yeah.
But I mentioned about the ice pack and the cold water. You know, I had a cousin that had a burn on his hand. And they thought the best thing to do was to use water or something cold. And up to this day, he has a serious cold remaining system. Not only that, but they have said by some physicians that it's not the best thing to do, especially the ice pack. It can cause something like epilepsy and things like that. I don't know how practical that is. I heard you mention that, so I just wanted to know if some medical fraternity could verify about the cold water usage. Thank you.
Thank you, dear caller.
I can speak on that. In the event of somebody having a fever or any level of heat, for that matter, and you have to cool them down, sudden cooling of the area is dangerous. So this is why if somebody moves something from one extreme to the other, if you have something that is hot and you put ice on, what happens to the ice? The ice melts really quickly. If you have something that is really hot and you put water on it, what happens? It fries up and steams up very rapidly. So what I'm saying here is you do not apply the changing of any temperature suddenly. The sudden change it will definitely worsen a situation. So it is gradated, meaning that I did say that you apply regular temperature water, and as time go on, and GT, I think you could verify that with us. So we did say you apply regular temperature water, and you gradually decrease the temperature as you go along. So the color, you're right, that the sudden application of too cold could make a seeming ordinary situation become worse. So you don't want to do that. You want to start with regular and change it as you go along. Yeah.
So we do have one more caller, and I said the previous caller was our last, but we do have one. This one will certainly be our final one. Caller, good morning, and make your point, please. Go right ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
What I called to make mention of is that the war that's going on between Russia and I think it's Kuwait. You know, a lot of people go through difficult times. Some have to leave their home and go. So what I call to say is that the people who are fear of even being in their own land and they leave, don't give up. Call to God and ask Him to help them, and He will come and deliver them.
All right. Thank you, caller. Thank you for your contribution this morning. Sylvan, I think it's about time for us to wrap this morning. We're already over about 2 minutes on today's program. And any final comments you want to throw out before we take a wrap this morning?
No, we just want to conclude by saying where we started is that an emergency kit is essential to every household. And it is not just a household. We're saying that places of businesses should have one. And those who have people who are trained, they should also have what is called a defibrillator, an AED. In addition to that, smaller commuter buses, etc., it is time for us to having a first aid kit and a utility item that we should keep with us, and learning to use them is also essential. So once again, it has been my pleasure to be on this program. We look forward to doing this again with you and to provide information and knowledge to all our listeners, viewers, and followers.
Thank you also, Sylvan, for being with us this morning. Always fruitful information thrown out to our listening and viewing public, and I certainly do learn a lot listening myself. So until we do this again next week, have yourself a great day, sir. All right. Hey, folks, that's where we say goodbye to the point for today. Today, Monday, the 31st. Join us again for another edition tomorrow, which will be the start of a brand new month. Until then, have a good one. I'll say goodbye.